The summer of 1943 witnessed a pivotal moment in history as the Kursk bulge erupted into chaos. In the vicinity of the Paneri station, the earth trembled under relentless bombardments, while a thick black smoke cloaked the sky, heralding the arrival of the German armored forces. Among the clattering tracks of the advancing war machines, one tank stood out, the formidable Tiger, its impenetrable frontal armor gleaming ominously. German tank crews felt invincible. No Soviet artillery of the time was believed capable of penetrating their defenses from a distance. Yet unbeknownst to them, the crew of the 203mm Howitzer, known as the Rudia, had them in their sights. Captain Vasilyevsky, commanding this artillery piece, made a decision that defied conventional military doctrine. With a range of 500 meters, he ordered a direct fire. The deafening roar of the cannon shattered the air as a shell weighing 100 kilograms soared toward its target. As the smoke cleared, the captain raised his binoculars, disbelief washing over him. Where the mighty Tiger had once stood, only a twisted hulk remained, embedded deeply into the rich Kursk soil. The tank's turret had been violently torn away, and its crew, caught off guard, perished instantly. The German assault faltered in that moment, their advance collapsing under the weight of shock and confusion. In the subsequent report by Captain Klaus Bausewitz of the Wehrmacht, he would describe the encounter with a mysterious anti-tank weapon of unprecedented power, never suspecting that their elite tank had been felled by a howitzer designed for an entirely different purpose. This artillery piece, a harbinger of fear from the Finnish forests to the streets of Berlin, had its origins in the tumultuous 20s, when the fledgling Red Army faced a dire need for heavy artillery. The lessons of the First World War were stark. Without heavy guns, it was nearly impossible to breach fortified enemy positions. Concrete bunkers and pillboxes withstood assaults from field guns, and infantry fell in droves against these unyielding strongholds. Soviet military leadership recognized that the future of warfare demanded artillery capable of reducing enemy fortifications to rubble. In 1926, the Design Bureau of the Artillery Committee received a monumental task: to develop a 200 to 300 millimeter howitzer within 46 months. The caliber was chosen deliberately. A shell of such diameter carried enough explosive power to obliterate any fortification of the era. Soviet engineers toiled day and night, and by January 16, 1928, the project was complete. They presented two variants, one featuring a muzzle brake and the other without. After careful analysis, preference was given to the design that promised to redefine the landscape of warfare. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a new chapter in military history began to unfold, one that would forever alter the fate of battles and the lives of those caught in the crossfire. A groundbreaking artillery piece emerged from the legendary Bolshevik factory in Leningrad, marking a pivotal moment in military innovation. The year was 1931, and within the massive walls of this industrial titan, engineers crafted a formidable howitzer, devoid of a muzzle brake, yet boasting remarkable reliability. This colossal weapon, mounted on a robust tracked carriage, was capable of launching shells over a distance of up to 18 kilometers, a feat that stunned military experts. As summer unfolded, the scientific artillery range became a hub of activity. Intense firing trials commenced, aimed at determining the optimal charge for this new artillery marvel. Testers subjected the howitzer to the harshest conditions, pushing its limits to evaluate its strength and endurance. The results were nothing officially adopted into the arsenal of the Red Army, designated as the the 203mm Howitzer model of 1931. Production ramped up across several factories, with the Bolshevik plant, alongside facilities in Stalingrad and Kramatorsk, contributing to the effort. Each factory took the blueprints and adapted them to their technological capabilities, resulting in two distinct variants entering service. One of these models featured a tracked system, allowing it to fire directly from the ground without the need for specialized platforms. A crew of 15 was required to operate the howitzer, each member possessing not only exceptional physical strength, but also remarkable stamina. Deploying the weapon into combat position took approximately an hour, heavily influenced by the terrain and the season. To facilitate loading, a manual winch was installed on the carriage, as each shell weighed around 100 kilograms. The howitzer fired both high-explosive and concrete-piercing munitions, employing a separate charge system. The high-explosive shell, propelled at an initial velocity of 575 meters per second, could travel nearly 18 kilometers, approximately 1 kilometer farther than its German counterpart. The concrete-piercing shell was capable of breaching barriers up to 1 meter thick, turning any bunker into a grave for its defenders. With a firing rate of 1 round every 2 minutes, each shot had the potential to alter the course of local skirmishes. Between 1932 and 1942, Soviet industry produced over 1,100 of these howitzers, each destined to leave its mark on the annals of 20th century warfare. Yet, before unleashing their wrath upon the fortified positions of the Wehrmacht, these weapons faced a rigorous test in the snow-laden forests of Karelia. On the 30th of November 1939, the Red Army crossed the Soviet-Finnish border at the Karelian Isthmus. Command expected a swift victory over the small northern nation, but it soon became evident that the conflict would not unfold as anticipated. Soviet forces initially pushed the Finns back from the border territories with relative ease, advancing swiftly. Yet the true challenge of this war was only beginning to reveal itself, and the howitzers, poised for action, would soon play a crucial role in this unexpected struggle. The imposing Mannerheim Line loomed ahead, a formidable bastion stretching across the Karelian Isthmus, linking the Gulf of Finland to Lake Ladoga. More than just a series of trenches, it represented an impenetrable defensive belt fortified with concrete bunkers, anti-tank obstacles, minefields, and barbed wire. The thickness of some bunkers reached an astonishing 1.5 meters, their tops shielded by layers of earth and stone. Initial attempts by the Red Army to breach this Finnish stronghold resulted in devastating losses. Infantry launched wave after wave of attacks against the concrete fortifications, only to be met with a hail of machine gun fire that cut arid by hidden mines or targeted by anti-tank guns concealed within the seemingly invulnerable casemates. Field artillery proved powerless against the thick concrete walls, with shells merely scarring the surfaces, leaving shallow indentations that failed to inflict any meaningful damage on the resolute defenders. Having barely overcome the forward positions of the fortified area, Soviet forces halted before the main defensive line. To shatter this formidable barrier, something far more potent than conventional artillery was required. Thus, heavy artillery regiments equipped with B-4 howitzers began arriving at the front lines. These fearsome weapons, for the first time in history, were poised to unleash their devastating power in real combat. By early March 1940, 142 of these howitzers were concentrated along the Finnish front. Artillery crews carefully positioned their weapons, camouflaging them from enemy observers, while spotters meticulously adjusted fire, pinpointing the locations of Finnish bunkers. When the preparations concluded, the world bore witness to an unprecedented onslaught that the Finns could scarcely fathom. The first 100-kilogram shells rained down on the Mannerheim line, delivering a staggering impact. The concrete fortifications, once deemed impregnable, shattered under the force of monstrous explosions. The explosive rounds pierced through 1.5-meter thick walls, detonating inside the casemates and obliterating everything in their path. High explosive munitions obliterated upper ceilings, unleashing torrents of earth and debris upon the defenders below. Those bunkers that survived the initial barrage transformed into uninhabitable ruins, their entrances blocked by rubble, while the unfortunate defenders remained entombed within concrete crypts, cut off from the outside world. Soviet soldiers, witnessing the catastrophic results of their heavy artillery, coined a fitting nickname for the B-4 howitzers: Karelian sculptors. This title proved eerily accurate, as the shells of the B-4 turned once precise concrete structures into bizarre abstract compositions of twisted rebar and formless debris. Where a formidable bunker had stood just a day before, now lay a chaotic landscape of destruction, a testament to the relentless power of war and the ingenuity of human engineering transformed into ruin. Amidst the remnants of war, twisted metal and debris lay scattered, remnants of what were once formidable Finnish fortifications. Engineers who had dedicated years to the construction of these bastions could hardly fathom that their creations would be obliterated in mere moments. The B-4 howitzer, a behemoth of destruction, proved particularly effective in neutralizing key defensive strongholds. There were instances when artillerymen, with a single precise shot, decimated entire enemy convoys attempting to deliver reinforcements or munitions to frontline positions. The explosion of a 100-kilogram shell left no survivors within a wide radius, a brutal testament to the power contained within that metallic beast. Shrapnel exploded outward with such ferocity that it pierced the armor of light vehicles and mowed down infantry across vast expanses. Finnish soldiers began to feel an overwhelming dread at the mere mention of this artillery. The thunderous roar of its fire echoed for miles, a sound that instilled fear deep within the hearts of those who heard it. Yet, the B-4 was not without its flaws, which became painfully evident in the harsh Finnish winter. The sheer weight of the gun made mobility across snow-laden forest roads a Herculean task. Setting it up for battle could take over an hour, and in the frozen ground, this process stretched even longer. Transporting the howitzer required disassembly into two parts, with the barrel detached and loaded onto a specialized cart, while the tracked carriage was towed separately. Movement speed on roads barely exceeded 15 kilometers per hour, and traversing off-road reduced it to almost nothing. Despite these challenges, the howitzer lived up to expectations. Throughout the course of the Soviet-Finnish War, only 4 units of this type were lost or incapacitated, a negligible number considering the intensity of the combat. The Mannerheim line was breached, and a significant part of that achievement belonged to the crews operating the B-4. Yet, the Finnish campaign was merely a rehearsal, a precursor to the true trial that lay ahead. An impending war loomed, one that would surpass all that humanity had ever witnessed. In this conflict, the howitzer would earn a new name, one that would etch itself into the annals of history forever. On the 22nd of June, 1941, the peaceful existence of the Soviet Union was shattered in an instant. German forces unleashed their monstrous might upon the western borders of the country. By that time, the Red Army boasted 849 B-4 Howitzers, organized into 33 heavy artillery regiments. These units formed part of the artillery reserve of the Supreme Command, intended to bolster forces at critical points. However, the rapid advance of the Wehrmacht disrupted all plans of the Soviet command. The heavy artillery regiments found themselves too unwieldy to adapt to the constantly shifting front lines. The colossal howitzers struggled to reposition quickly, leading to a dire reality that threatened to unravel the very fabric of Soviet defense. As the shadows of impending conflict loomed ever closer, a critical decision emerged from the highest echelons of command. The stakes demanded a bold yet necessary course of action: to withdraw the heavy artillery to the depths of the rear, safeguarding these invaluable weapons, each a testament to the relentless ingenuity of Soviet engineers and laborers, for the battles that lay ahead. The howitzers embarked on their journey eastward, distancing themselves from the front lines, where they would bide their time, awaiting the moment to rejoin the fray. Yet, in the initial chaotic months of war, a number of these formidable guns fell into enemy hands. The German army, eager to capitalize on their spoils, integrated the captured howitzers into their arsenal, designating them as the 23-centimeter howitzer 503-5R. By March 1944, the Eastern Front bore witness to the presence of 8 such artillery pieces, now equipped with shells forged from Soviet concrete-piercing projectiles and German charges. The mere fact that the enemy deemed it worthwhile to adopt these captured howitzers into their ranks spoke volumes of their exceptional combat capabilities. For a year and a half, the B-4s lay in reserve while fierce battles raged across the front lines. Soviet forces endured retreats, relinquishing cities and entire armies, yet they remained unyielding. The German advance faltered under the relentless winter of December 1941 near Moscow. By the summer of 1942, the German threat loomed over Stalingrad and the Caucasian oil fields. Then, in November of that same year, the operation known as Uranus erupted, encircling a massive contingent of 300,000 soldiers under Paulus. The strategic initiative began to shift into the hands of the Red Army, and the command finally remembered the formidable artillery waiting patiently in the rear. From the end of 1942, the howitzers began to return to the front lines, now tasked with a new mission: not to defend, but to advance. They would breach the German fortifications just as they had shattered Finnish strongholds 2 years prior. The 33 regiments armed with these guns became true guardians for Soviet infantry and tank crews. The Supreme Command expertly maneuvered these units, deploying them to break through enemy lines while establishing overwhelming fire superiority. As summer of 1943 approached, both sides prepared for a decisive confrontation at Kursk. German command amassed its finest tank divisions in this theater, including elite units armed with the latest heavy tanks and self-propelled artillery. Here, the Germans would first unleash their Tigers and Ferdinands, whose armor was deemed impenetrable by most Soviet anti-tank weaponry. However, Soviet command had its own surprises in store for the enemy. During the defensive battles around Kursk, the B-4 howitzers demonstrated their ability to not only combat fortifications, but also to effectively engage heavy enemy armor. In the vicinity of the Paneri station, one of the German Ferdinands met its end with a direct hit, showcasing the resurgence of Soviet firepower on the battlefield. The detonation of a 100-kilogram high-explosive shell struck the upper armor plate of the tank, unleashing a devastating force that tore through the heavy interior. The thick steel, which had once shielded the Ferdinand from any Soviet anti-tank guns, crumbled against the monstrous power of 230mm artillery. German tanks, once proud of their invulnerability within their steel fortresses, were suddenly confronted with the grim reality that the Russians possessed weaponry capable of transforming any of their armored vehicles into a graveyard. Counter-offensive, the B-4 howitzers became an indispensable tool for breaching enemy defenses. Artillery crews operated with audacity and decisiveness, often advancing to minimal distances for direct fire. Such tactics were not dictated by any military regulations. War imposed its own rules. When infantry found themselves pinned down by fire from fortified buildings or bunkers, artillerymen would maneuver their howitzers into direct sight and, with a few precise shots, reduce a stronghold to rubble. One accurate shot from a B-4 could resolve a problem that would require hours of bloody assaults and inevitable losses for an infantry unit. It was during this time that German soldiers bestowed upon the Soviet howitzer a nickname that would echo through history. Amid the fierce urban combat in Berlin, they referred to it as Stalin's sledgehammer, a name that encapsulated both fear and an involuntary respect for the might of Soviet artillery. As the tide of war shifted and Soviet forces pushed westward, liberating occupied territories, the nature of combat evolved dramatically. Previously, B-4 howitzers primarily engaged fortified positions and defensive lines. Now, they increasingly found themselves operating in urban environments, presenting entirely new tactical challenges for which artillerymen were initially unprepared. Every stone building in European cities transformed into a fortress, often housing not one but 5 firing points, all capable of delivering devastating crossfire. Machine gun nests were constructed in basements, on various floors, and in attics, with thick brick walls offering reliable protection from shrapnel and bullets. Soviet artillery crews quickly developed effective tactics for flushing out machine gunners from urban structures. There was no room for hesitation. If the opportunity arose to approach within direct fire range, they would strike with precision. When close proximity proved impossible, they would blanket the enemy position with concentrated fire from a safe distance. However, the true artistry lay in the so-called sniper howitzer shot. This tactical maneuver involved infantry and smaller caliber artillery suppressing an enemy stronghold with intense fire, creating the opening needed for the heavier B-4 to deliver a devastating blow. The synergy between ground troops and artillery units became a hallmark of Soviet strategy, embodying a relentless pursuit of victory amidst the ruins of war-torn cities. Each shot fired was not merely an act of destruction. It was a statement of resilience, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who fought against overwhelming odds. The city into a formidable fortress, fortified with layers of defenses and strategically placed artillery positions. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and desperation. Soldiers on both sides braced themselves for the inevitable clash that would determine the fate of millions. As the first rays of dawn illuminated the battered streets, the Soviet forces prepared for an onslaught. Among them, the B-4 artillery unit stood ready, its operators focused and resolute. Their mission was clear: suppress the enemy's firepower and pave the way for infantry to advance. With each passing moment, the tension mounted. The gunners were acutely aware that their success hinged on precision and timing. The B-4 crew meticulously adjusted their sights, honing in on a specific window where enemy snipers were wreaking havoc. The air crackled with anticipation as the gunner steadied his breath. He knew that the weight of their task was immense. One shot could mean the difference between life and death for countless soldiers waiting on the front lines. The countdown began in their minds, a silent agreement that this would be the decisive moment. With a deafening roar, the shell was launched, slicing through the air with deadly intent. It struck with terrifying accuracy, penetrating the building's defenses and unleashing a cataclysmic explosion. The impact was so powerful that it sent shock waves rippling through the surrounding area, collapsing walls and obliterating the entrenched enemy positions. The carnage was staggering. Reports later revealed that nearly 100 enemy soldiers and officers fell victim to this single, expertly executed shot. In the aftermath, as the dust settled and the echoes of destruction faded, the significance of that moment crystallized. The commander of the B-4 unit was swiftly recommended for a prestigious award, a testament to the skill and bravery required to achieve such a feat in the crucible of war. One shell, 100 lives extinguished. A grim reminder of the brutal calculus of conflict. As Soviet troops pressed forward through eastern Prussia, Poland, and into Germany, similar tales of artillery prowess emerged. Each battle was a testament to the relentless spirit of the soldiers who wielded their weapons with precision and purpose. The siege of Königsberg was particularly notable, where the B-4 units faced the daunting task of dismantling a city fortified to withstand a prolonged assault. The Germans had transformed Königsberg into an impenetrable bastion, complete with bunkers and fortified positions at every turn. Yet, the heavy artillery thrived in this environment. With each barrage, the B-4 crews methodically dismantled the enemy's defenses, turning once imposing structures into rubble. General von Talleyrand, the fortress commander, later acknowledged that it was the relentless fire of the Soviet heavy artillery that ultimately broke the resolve of his garrison. But the most formidable challenge awaited them in Berlin, the heart of the Third Reich. The Berlin operation commenced in April 1945, and it quickly became apparent that this would be one of the bloodiest confrontations of the entire war. The German command had fortified the city to an extraordinary degree, transforming it into a citadel brimming with determination and despair. The streets would soon echo with the sounds of valor and tragedy as the Soviet forces prepared to confront the last bastion of Nazi power, their resolve unyielding in the face of overwhelming odds. Amidst the chaos of war, a city transformed into a colossal fortress, every building and intersection meticulously fortified for defense. Barricades sprang up in the streets, while basements were converted into machine gun nests. Anti-tank artillery stood resolute at the crossroads. The garrison received orders to fight until the last bullet, and the Soviet troops executed these commands with a fanatical determination. In the heart of Berlin, at the intersection of Linkstrasse and Ritterstrasse, Soviet infantry encountered a formidable stronghold. A well-fortified corner building had been prepared for a prolonged defense, and dislodging the German forces through conventional means proved impossible. In a bold maneuver, a howitzer, the B-4, was rolled directly onto the scene. At a mere 150 meters, the artillery opened fire, unleashing 6 rounds that turned the sturdy stone structure into a smoldering ruin. The resistance in this sector crumbled, allowing the infantry to advance toward the Reichstag. The war concluded in May 1945, yet the saga of Stalin's hammer was far from over. The last echoes of gunfire faded in the vanquished Berlin as Soviet soldiers began their journey home, while military engineers immersed themselves in blueprints, analyzing the combat experiences of recent battles. The B-4 howitzer had proven itself brilliantly across all fronts of the Great Patriotic War. But its chief drawback was glaring to anyone who had witnessed its operation. The cumbersome tracked chassis rendered transportation a daunting nightmare for the artillerymen. During marches, the howitzer had to be disassembled into two parts, with the barrel loaded onto a separate wagon, and the speed of movement barely reached 15 kilometers per hour. In modern maneuver warfare, such unwieldiness could prove fatal. Design Bureau number 221, located at the Barricades factory, received the mission to resolve this issue once and for all. The engineers approached the task with the thoroughness characteristic of Soviet weapon designers. The solution was evident. Replace the heavy tracks with a wheeled chassis. However, this seemingly simple idea demanded a complete redesign of the howitzer while preserving its outstanding combat qualities. Years of meticulous work, calculations, and tests ensued. In 1955, the new modification of the howitzer was successfully tested and adopted into the Soviet Army under the designation B-4M. The entire fleet of old tracked artillery underwent conversion to the new wheeled chassis. The results of this modernization exceeded all expectations. The towing speed more than doubled, now reaching 35 kilometers per hour. Yet, the most significant advantage lay in the seamless transportation of the artillery. The barrel no longer had to be removed during transport. Instead, it could simply be retracted into a special transport position. This innovation drastically reduced the time required for repositioning, allowing the artillery to maintain its combat readiness in the face of an ever-evolving battlefield. The transformation of howitzers from a travel state to combat readiness and back again marked a significant evolution in military logistics, streamlining operations for artillery units by eliminating the need for a second vehicle for the gun carriage. The modernized B-4M howitzers served diligently within the Soviet Army, yet the rapidly changing global landscape beckoned them towards an entirely unforeseen role. An era of atomic weaponry was dawning, fundamentally altering the trajectory of artillery development. As early as 1953, the Americans had tested an atomic artillery shell for their 280mm gun. The Soviet Union, determined not to lag in this arms race, turned its attention towards the formidable Stalin's hammer, a weapon proven in the crucible of battle. In an atmosphere of the strictest secrecy, work commenced on creating a specialized atomic charge for the B-4M howitzer. Soviet scientists and engineers faced an enormous challenge: to fit a nuclear explosive device within the dimensions of a 203mm artillery shell. After years of intense labor, they succeeded. The howitzers gained the capability to fire atomic munitions up to a distance of 20 kilometers. The once conventional artillery piece, designed for demolishing concrete bunkers, now boasted a nuclear payload, transforming it into a weapon of an entirely different magnitude. One single shot could obliterate an entire enemy battalion or incinerate a small city. The accumulated expertise from years of design, production, and modernization of the 203mm howitzers did not go to waste. It was meticulously harnessed in the creation of a new, even more powerful weapon. By the 1970s, the Soviet Army had introduced the 203mm self-propelled artillery system known as Pion. This machine embodied the entire spectrum of combat experience gleaned from the B-4 and all advancements in post-war design philosophy. The Pion could traverse any terrain independently, swiftly occupy firing positions, and unleash shells with the same devastating power that once turned Finnish bunkers and Berlin districts into ruins. Modernized B-4M howitzers remained in service until the late 1970s, ultimately replaced by contemporary self-propelled systems. The illustrious combat journey of Stalin's hammer drew to a close. From the forests of Karelia to the streets of Berlin, from the breaches of the Mannerheim Line to the assaults on Stettin, this artillery piece bore witness to some of the most harrowing battles of the 20th century. Its shells shattered impregnable fortifications, halted tank armies, and instilled terror in the hearts of the enemy. The crews of the howitzers achieved the extraordinary, firing direct hits on tanks and ruins where such precision was deemed impossible. Time and again, Stalin's hammer lived up to its fearsome name, a testament to the relentless spirit of warfare and innovation. Legendary Soviet weaponry has etched its mark on history, each piece a testament to innovation and power. From the iconic Kalashnikov rifle, revered for its reliability, to the formidable T-34 tank, which turned the tide on the battlefield during World War II. These machines are not just tools of war, but symbols of a nation's resilience. As the echoes of past conflicts resonate, the stories behind these weapons reveal a complex interplay of engineering and strategic necessity. The design philosophies that guided their creation are as intriguing as the battles they fought. Each model carries with it tales of valor, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of supremacy in a world fraught with strife. What other military technologies capture your imagination? The world of Soviet engineering is vast, and countless stories await to be uncovered. The legacy of these machines continues to inspire curiosity and respect, inviting us to delve deeper into their history and significance.